Good morning, afternoon, evening, or good night, depending, of course, on when you're actually listening to this. Today's video is actually more of an audio affair. It's more of a podcast-style video, so nothing on screen is going to be overly critical to the video itself anyways. So if you want to do something else while you listen along, I would actually encourage that for this video. So, of course, for the title, we are talking about a handful of PC gaming misconceptions that I hear on a regular basis, so I'm just going to sort of run through those and give my thoughts on them. But I will point out before I get started in rambling here that links from videos I've done in the past that sort of refute some of these PC misconceptions are linked in the description below, specifically the ones dealing with PC costs. Go ahead and check out the description down below again if you want to see some other videos that sort of fly in the face of these misconceptions. Leading off is one of my favorites, actually. You hear it all the time, and that is that controllers are just better than keyboards for playing games. Now, of course, controllers are better for playing some games. If you think about flight simulators compared to keyboards or racing games, some of those style of games really are better on a controller, and that's largely because you have analog inputs available on a controller that you may just not have available on a keyboard. Take a racing simulator, for example, where a controller would just dominate somebody on a keyboard, largely because with an analog stick, you can turn any degree of left or right, whereas with a keyboard, you're either going straight, left, or right at one given time. There's no such thing as a middle ground unless you have one of those really fancy optical switch keyboards, and even then, I would still prefer the analog stick over those optical switches. But of course, the heart of this argument is that the console input device is better than the PCs. The problem and fallacy, of course, with this argument is that the PC not just has a keyboard and mouse available to it, but it has all the console controllers, as well as several other more interesting input devices. Things like some very expensive, going back to the racing simulator example again, things like very expensive racing simulator setups that use very realistic steering wheels and other controls to really give you an immersive experience. Now, of course, in the past, consoles have had other input devices available to them as well, and of course, we've had motion controls on consoles for a while as well, but the fact of the matter is the PC just has a lot more input devices available to it, and you can pick the one that makes the most sense for the games you're playing. Next up is the idea that consoles provide a better couch experience, and to be honest, I'm not going to completely shoot this one out of the sky. Consoles are designed to work best on a TV with a couch experience, whereas PCs, at least the Windows operating system, is best designed to work from a desk and seated position. Now, there are some very simple ways around that. First and foremost, Steam has its big picture mode, which allows you to navigate around Steam with just a controller, which is great, but my ultimate suggestion is to just pick up a wireless keyboard that has a trackpad attached to the keyboard, so you don't need a separate mouse, and then you just need a wireless controller just like a console would use. So to get into your game, you would just use your keyboard, and from there on out, you just use your controller. And I actually have a video in the description down below referencing those links again that you can go ahead and click on to see just how this works. But I mean, yeah, it's a little bit less elegant than a console, but really, if this is your number one reason, or even in your top 10 reasons to get a console over a PC, you're really grasping at straws. Third up is the idea that consoles have better game optimization, and again, I'm not blasting this one clean out of the sky, because the fact of the matter is that with consoles, you do, at least outwardly, appear to get better performance for the given hardware that you have in your system. But where this one falls apart is the fact that consoles still run games like trash a good portion of the time. When you hear about current generation consoles, that's the PlayStation 4, and especially the Xbox One has been the worst offender, running games at resolutions like 900p, 30 FPS, that's just not acceptable from a gaming perspective. Sure, you may get more out of the given horsepower that you're working with, but even pretty budget graphics cards give you better performance in modern AAA games than you can get out of consoles. I mean, we're talking about things like a GTX 1050 Ti, which is a $150 graphics card, will run modern games at 1080p 60 FPS most of the time. So yes, consoles may technically have better game optimization, but the end user experience is still better on the PC as long as you have even budget hardware on up from the current generation of hardware. I mean, a 1050 Ti is not expensive. And again, referencing the links down below, it's not hard to build a gaming PC with a 1050 Ti for about the same cost as a console. So sure, optimization is better on a console, technically, but the experience is still better on a PC. And getting on to the PC myths that seem to propagate more often and be more readily recycled by what I would call console peasants, or at least people that are console fanboys, is that gaming PCs are expensive. Now, PCs are, of course, a little bit like a car in that you can make them as expensive as you really want, but they definitely don't have to be. Again, referencing my video where I tried to build a $400 gaming PC that was better than Bitwit's, and from a pure performance perspective, it may have ended up being better than Bitwit's just because I fit a 1050 Ti in a $400 build. But the point here is that you don't have to spend big dollars to get a really solid 1080p gaming experience. In addition, the savings that you collect from PC gaming via Steam sales and not paying that yearly fee to get online matchmaking, which should be free on consoles, that's such an anti-consumer policy in the first place, will open up more games to you. You can spend that money back on the games you want to be playing instead of spending it on services that should be free in the first place. And then, of course, there's always the argument that Windows is really expensive, and there are a couple ways around that. First and foremost, you never have to really activate Windows 10 if you really don't want to, but if you're someone like me that does want to activate Windows 10, you can get keys from places like eBay for under $10. So yeah, it's a little bit of an added expense there, but I mean, it's really nothing too major. And this is, of course, ignoring how great the used PC hardware market is. You can do things like upgrade old pre-builds by slapping in a graphics card and suddenly having a really solid gaming PC for a little bit of nothing, or you can build PCs that don't really need to handle AAA titles, that are just really intended to handle esports titles like maybe Overwatch or League of Legends, Dota, CSGO, those types of games, because you may not have an interest in playing other big AAA titles that require lots of horsepower. And the whole expense thing really leads us into the fifth and last misconception that I'm going to cover on this video, which is the idea that you have to constantly upgrade your rig. Now, this is a demonstrably false statement, as I have a video that I did somewhat recently where I paired a GTX 660 with an AMD 860K processor, and these parts are anything but new. And what I found was it is still very possible to play modern AAA titles on this computer, even with the old hardware that was present. Now sure, as your computer ages and depending on the initial investment, you will have to sort of step down your graphics settings on newer games from time to time, but the idea that you have to upgrade them any more than you might have to upgrade a console made in the current generation is probably false, and provided that you do a decent job of picking your parts, it's just not going to be a problem. So those are 5 misconceptions about PC gaming that I hear a lot and see a lot in videos, Reddit, and just generally around the internet, as well as hearing some of those things from my friends. But what I'm curious about is, what PC misconceptions do you hear from people and see around the internet? Let me know in those comments down below. And of course, those links that I mentioned are down there to sort of refute some of these misconceptions that you hear on a regular basis about PC gaming. But if you like this video, give me a like, share, subscribe, comment. All those things down below help out a whole lot for the channel. You can follow me on Instagram and on Twitter at Hoosier Hardware. They're the same tag for your convenience. And as always, we'll let YouTube go ahead and queue up several more videos from my channel for you to watch. I'm Shane with Hoosier Hardware, and I'll see you guys in the next video.